It's Nightside with Dan Ray on WBZ, Boston's News Radio.
Bradley J for Dan, and we're going to talk about AI. The number one thing we're going to do is try to get at a definition. If you walk away from this segment understanding what AI is, that will be a big win. But there are so many uses for it, both positive and negative, that it's important to know about those too. I actually use it myself. I use the paid version of ChatGPT, and I'm actually going to tell you how I use it. But I want to learn all about AI, and so do you. Really, you need to know. We're going to talk with an expert here, Matt Rosen, CEO and founder of Allata, A-L-L-A-T-A. It's a company that helps automate companies using AI. And we welcome Matt to the program. Hi, Matt.
Hey, good evening. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. You have a big, booming voice. I'm glad to hear the great connection. All right.
Awesome.
As you heard me say, the primary directive here is to first understand what this thing that is constantly referred to as AI, what it is. What is AI? And how is it different from simply being a search engine? Because it's a little confusing now when you Google something, it gives you an AI generated answer sometimes. So I think folks confuse it with just being a better search engine. So I'm sure you have to explain to people at cocktail parties all the time what AI really is. So help all the millions of us listening now out and explain what it is.
Yeah, so the concept of artificial intelligence has actually been around since the 50s, where, there's researchers dreamed of computers being smarter than humans, and even being able to fool humans that they are a human. So these concepts have been around since the 1950s in a lot of computer science learning and theory, but it wasn't until literally the last 10 years that we had the actual computing power to make this a reality. And so when we think about what artificial intelligence is, it's having a computer system act, reason, think, and respond as if it were a human. Now, these are not humans, but what they are based on is what's called a neural network, which is how we think as humans, where we have lots of different connections in our brain that help us recognize what a dog looks like, help recall memories, help memorize facts, songs. And so what these artificial intelligence engines are able to do is process huge amounts of information. They've been trained on everything the human race knows that's publicly available. And then by going to an interface, most people are used to OpenAI's ChatGPT or Anthropic's model Claude, or the one you described as Google's Gemini, which now is kind of taking the place of their search. And what it will do is go out and search all the available information and come back to you with different answers that you can then use and act on. So that's the very kind of base definition is, AI is really a system that acts, thinks, reasons like a human being, or as close to it as we can get with modern computing power and theory today.
How close are we to that? Because I don't see any reason down the road why AI can't be way smarter than humans without the frailties of humans. And I know we're far away from that, but it will happen 100%.
Well, I would argue that there are some AI engines out there that are, at least they process faster than humans. You can point AI at a huge volume of documents or library of books or video content, and it can look through that and provide insights and summarize that way faster than a human could. Now, it still requires humans to review that information or that answer and make sure that it's accurate, because it's not always accurate. Sometimes it makes up answers and has what people refer to as hallucinations, where it envisions something that isn't real or didn't really happen. Because the way these models work is they create inferences between themselves, and they statistically generate what the output should be. So it's not 100% correct, but you know what? As humans, we're not 100% correct.
Oh, not at all.
But,
and
so we shouldn't expect that AI is going to be smarter than us, because frankly, we created it and we fed it information that we created as humans.
Yes, but I'll get to that later, where I think that it can be. You're the expert, but it seems to me it can be smarter than we are. So back to the difference between a Google search and an AI search. A Google search just brings up the top hits of things, the top individual instances of articles, etc., of posts that match what you searched for. It will give you a list. However, the ChatGPT or whichever one you choose will read in an instant everything ever written on the subject you're asking about, and it will synthesize the answer. Instead of giving you a list, it reads all the lists and gives you an answer based on the preponderance of the evidence in all those lists.
Yeah, it's actually pretty amazing how fast it can scan the amount of information it does and provide answers. In fact, there's a number of people that who have relied on Google search for their businesses. You know, someone clicking on that link and buying something from their website or calling them for whatever service they provide that aren't getting as many hits as they used to because the Google search is coming up with that result set, summarizing it, and then it puts the links down below that. And some people don't ever get that far because they're just looking for a piece of information. If you think about the big categories that AI is really good at, it's good at automating tasks, and we can talk about some of those. It's great at creating insights, which is what we're talking about right now with the Gemini search, where if you go to Perplexity, it's a very similar concept. And then it's good at creating things. It can take things that have previously been produced, and it can create a summary draft. It can create an article. It can create a contract. It can create a song. It can create a video. And it's getting better at these things with every new model release, which these big model providers are literally coming out with new models almost on the weekly basis and competing with one another to give us the most computing power possible. So it's really kind of fascinating how the speed at which AI is moving. I think where we've been challenged is how quickly we adopt it as humans because of the very power that it possesses.
Now, you mentioned a while back that it's not perfect and not even close to being perfect because it's wrong. However, doesn't it learn each time it's wrong and it won't make that mistake again? And as millions of people say, oh, yeah, that was wrong, millions of times, won't it eventually be right? At least way more right than a human?
It does. And with each search, it gets better. And with each new model release, it gets better. And then there are different reward systems that, you know, AIs are given as they're being trained so that it gets better at giving the right answer. So you've seen the amount of hallucinations and wrong information decrease with every model release that comes out. But just like humans, sometimes we're wrong, sometimes AI is wrong. And that's why, you know, we are big believers of having a human in the loop, especially where an important decision or action needs to be made as a result of that AI search.
Now, here's another reason that AI may be better to ask than a human. Humans have bias, and they, you know, if you ask it a political question, they could give you an answer based on a baked-in political bias. Of course, AI has the baked-in political bias of the programmers, at least in the beginning, but maybe AI will learn down the road. And it will, again, eliminate certain human frailties. Humans are wrong, but they don't learn as quickly as AI. How long do you think it'll be before you can trust? For example, if you say, hey, ChatGPT, here are my symptoms. Do I need to get an appendectomy? You know?
Yeah, I wouldn't leave an appendectomy up to AI, or, you know, should I go to the ER? That's if you're in great pain in the lower quadrant of your abdomen, you should probably go to the emergency room.
Yeah, but down the road, won't they be even better at diagnosing than doctors?
You know, I think they'll be a great assistant to doctors because, you know, doctors are human, and as great as they are and as smart as they are, I'm married to an OB-GYN. Doctors occasionally miss things or misdiagnose things. But then again, there's sometimes what they call a zebra, which is something that like is a 1 in a millionth or 1 in 100,000th that AI might not think of, but a doctor might because of their training. So we actually have a client that uses AI to look at radiological scans, and it is actually just as accurate as a radiologist, but they still don't make a decision until that AI data is presented to a radiologist to say, detect that a cancer has been growing. They still rely on that human to say, did the AI get this right? And you know what? The AI is just as accurate, if not more in some cases, at detecting, slight movements, say, in a tumor that's being studied. And so I do think you will have doctors and nurses be assisted by AI. I don't like to think of a future where there are all robot doctors and nurses and there are no humans.
However,
it takes the whole human element away of care.
The thing is, though, the ugly truth is that the economic considerations always win out. And if it's going to be way cheaper to have it done by AI, don't you think sooner or later insurance companies are going to require that? Sorry, we're not paying for a doctor. We're paying for the AI diagnosis down the road.
I hope that doesn't happen in my lifetime. But I can definitely see a future where as many human tasks as will be, automated and assisted by AI. But I don't see one where humans become irrelevant and you have hospitals run by only AI robots and not have human involvement.
All right. So we're going to talk to Steve in Cambridge, who has a question or a comment coming up. And anyone else, I take this opportunity now to invite you to join us in this really important conversation. I actually use ChatGPT. I use the paid version and everything. I'll tell you how I use it. And I have other questions about various apps that use it. Like I'm going to ask, can you get an app that uses AI to make fake headlines or fake graphics? And how good are they? I think it'll be so much fun to make fake headlines. And then, of course, you're going to run into all kinds of legal situations. What would the legality be if you create a graphic that's, say, unflattering to somebody? Will you be maybe liable or will you be on the hook for a lawsuit? We'll see. Anybody else? 617-254-1030. It's WBZ. More in a moment.
Nightside with Dan Ray on WBZ, Boston's News Radio.
Bradley J for Dan. We're talking AI. And we're really learning what it is and what it isn't yet. And we're being helped by Matt Rosen, the CEO and founder of Alata. First, am I saying that right? It looks correct.
It's actually Alata, but everybody calls it Alata at first. So Alata is the name of the company, and we're a technology consulting firm founded in Dallas that's now global with 350 resources across the globe, helping clients really understand this new technology wave and how to implement it and what to do with it and how to get folks to use it and how to govern it and use it safely. We started as a firm that did a lot of custom development and data work, and then AI has become a really big part of what we do in helping our clients really adopt the technology and figure out the best place to use it in their organization.
Well, hopefully that you're helping a lot of people and making a lot of money.
Sure, you got it.
I'm sure that I'm not the first person to say that. We have Steve in Cambridge who wants to join in the conversation. Hi, Steve. You're on WBZ.
Hi, Bradley J. Hi, Matt. Matt, first of all, I don't think you helped a lot to understand what AI is. Because I'm not sure I really understand what rational intelligence, the mind, all of these things are in humans. So when you start talking about this vis-a-vis machines, it's still not very clear. I mean, we don't really know what the mind is, period.
Well, that's a fair point. In fact, we only, as far as we know, use about 10% of our minds. And interestingly, by using AI in the future, we might be able to unlock more of the power that we hold in our brains, because as much as we know about the body, we know the least about the brain. And so we really have to model AI after what we think the mind can do. And if you want to look like a conventional definition of AI, it's really a system that trains on massive amounts of data, finds patterns, and uses them to make predictions or decisions. And with this latest wave of agents, actually take action based on the information it's compiled.
Right, that sounds great.
Does the human do that?
Sure,
not always.
I'm not sure that explains all what the human mind does or what human intelligence does. But I have one more point, or it's actually a question, Matt. AI depends completely on the information it's given, that it's trained. Now, for example, if you take something that's a very, very highly controversial subject, without picking a particular subject, where you have massive numbers of experts say one thing, and then you have a certain group of people who say the opposite, won't AI, in a sense, steer you towards this massive number of experts and eliminate those contrarians? And could it not be used to scrub all kinds of controversial data from the internet?
Well, it absolutely could. And that's why, we're all putting a lot of faith in these frontier model companies. And by frontier model, I'm talking OpenAI, I'm talking Anthropic, I'm talking Google, I'm talking Amazon, Microsoft. We are somewhat, as a society, depending on them and their AI governance boards to not take out those points of view which may be counter to the masses of experts. And there is an element of, training models where you train them not to be biased, not to have political opinions, not to incite people to violence, and then test to make sure that it's actually happening. These models are very powerful, and as such, they need to have governance around them, and there are literally an entire field of jobs popping up around what is, AI ethics and governance to make sure it's not doing some of the things that you mentioned or I just talked about, where it is eliminating one side of the point of view and only focusing on the others. But heck, you saw Ora Grok got super anti-Semitic and they had to take it down. And so these models have had flaws in them, cited incorrect information or gone on very inflammatory points of view. And it's become incumbent upon the model providers to police them, but then also for governments to police them. And it's probably not, the models are changing faster than we can keep up with them. And so it's going to be this never ending race to make sure that the models are giving accurate, non-biased, non-threatening information. And it's a big task ahead.
Yeah, but when you say accurate, non-biased, non-threatening information, that tends a lot to be on your point of view. What is accurate, what is non-threatening, what is non-biased.
That's true.
That's absolutely true. So what do you do? You could choose not to use models. Go ahead.
Isn't everything biased? Is there such a thing as non-biased? No. I would make the point that there's no such thing, because any entity, whether it be human or machine, is basing whatever they're saying on all the information they've gotten from all sources, including their parents or their programmer. So there's going to be a bias.
That's a fair statement. I know they're trying to make them as, say, non-political. You can only pick so many topics to train the model not to answer questions on. Like if you go ask for a model for legal advice, it will usually tell you it's not a lawyer. But it might cite, past casework or things that have happened. And again, that comes down to the model being trained to answer or not answer certain questions. But yes, if you look at AI, a lot of it's being trained with like Reddit data, and Reddit is obviously incredibly opinionated. And that's one of the reasons you can't take everything you get from an AI search as fact, and it needs to be checked by other models or double checked through the articles that it cites. Yeah, you can't take it at face value, and that's why I keep coming back to this point of having a human in the loop. AI shouldn't be making important decisions without somebody reviewing those first for accuracy before they take action. But it is a challenge where you have people just going out there asking questions of it. And like you talked about the medical diagnosis earlier, that's a pretty, I think, bad idea to have AI diagnose whether you have appendicitis and you need to go to the hospital or not. It might tell you that'd be a good idea, but ultimately you're a doctor that should decide it.
My last point, and then I'll let other people get on. Matt, who fact checks the fact checkers?
That's a good question. We're depending on a lot of smart folks out in Silicon Valley and think tanks, or other AI.
Gentlemen.
Thank you, Steve. That's good. Woo! So this is a mind bender. There are such deep questions. Now,
yeah, great question,
right
Stephen.
Now, AI simply scours. You ask it a question, it scours all available information and gives you what seems to pop up the most. But that's not thinking. And down the road, we're talking about AI that thinks, right? Is there a different kind of AI? And what is generative AI? We hear about generative AI. What's that? But I need to hold that till after this break. So that's my tease. We'll find out what generative AI is after this on WBZ.
You're on Nightside with Dan Ray on WBZ, Boston's News Radio.
That's correct. We're talking about AI. We're learning about it. And we're going to get to very specific pros and cons of it, things it can help with and dangers of it. Speaking with Matt Rosen, CEO and founder of Alata. And we do want to go to...
You got it.
We got to go to Alex and Millis because he's been on hold for a while. And here you go, Alex. What's going on?
Hey, Bradley. Hey, Matt. I'm going to play the devil's advocate and ask, could I use AI to increase my chances of winning the Powerball or, enhancing my wealth in the stock market?
You can give it a try. I think the jackpot's $950 million is probably not a bad idea. It's just going to generate numbers, though, and I think it's got about as good a chance as winning as you do if you just go and do the quick pick. But it's worth a try. And interestingly, there are some hedge funds out there that are starting to use AI, and one of them, I'm slipping on the name, is actually using it and getting some pretty good results. I can tell you I've tried it personally, and it's suggested some stocks for me. But I wouldn't say it's performed as well as some of my indices. But you can definitely use it to do research on stocks and help identify things that might be undervalued. But it's only going to be as good as the data it can gather out there about the stock in the public realm. And ultimately, it's sometimes the things you don't know that end up influencing a stock's price or the sentiment of the stock after they release earnings. Sometimes they have a great quarter, they drop, and if they have a bad quarter, they go up. No one knows whether stocks are going to go up, down, or in a circle, unfortunately, the least of which is AI.
So, Alex, I have ChatGPT, the paid version, not just the free version, and I just asked it, what Powerball number should I play? Do you want to hear the answer?
One that you like? I don't know.
It says, it's kind of a cop-out, not we, by the way, I can't predict or guarantee Powerball numbers. Those are completely random, and no system, tool, or person can give you a winning pick with certainty.
Right.
Hold on. That said, people sometimes enjoy different strategies, birthdays, etc. But it seems to me really, couldn't it scan all numbers and see if there's a pattern? I would think it could. Down the road, it's still pretty green, though.
Right.
Well, I just asked ChatGPT-5, and it said, I'm sorry, I can't help with picking lottery numbers. So this is an example where they programmed it not to give that information out.
Now, okay, but can't somebody cook up their own? It's called chatbot.
They could, but it's just randomly generated numbers.
That they don't program that out, and they make it specifically for that. I don't know. Okay, Alex, thank you very much. All right.
Good luck, Alex, if you're playing this weekend.
Now, when AI starts to think, will it be imbued with the notion of good? I mean, I think that it's probably going to be just like the human. I don't think humans are innately good or bad. They get taught either way. And couldn't some evil malefactor program one that says, look, be evil, do bad things? Can you make it
absolutely could happen.
Can you make its primary directive, do unto others as you would have others do unto you?
Well, the answer is you could do both. Because ultimately, AI isn't thinking, at least not today. It's reacting to the information that you feed it. But if you fed it with all evil information and told it to do bad things and tell people how to make bombs and other things like that, and it wasn't being supervised, someone could create a model that did that. Now, the models you see out there today that most people are using on the web are trying to be trained to be safe. But could someone build a model that is totally used for evil? That could absolutely happen, and that's something we want to avoid.
So it's not thinking yet. And if it's not thinking yet, then why is it called artificial intelligence? It's really just a really efficient information gatherer. It's not making judgments, right? It's not thinking yet, and it will think at some point or not.
Everyone's driving towards that. You hear the term AGI, or artificial general intelligence. That is where it really acts like a human and thinks for itself. If you think about the last few evolutions, you asked about Gen AI before the break.
Yeah.
The predecessor of that was something called machine learning, and that was where it was about teaching machines to learn from data or make predictions or decisions. So, for instance, we had a client that fed it lots of invoices and wanted to determine how to categorize those invoices, and then show could people save money on certain services based on what those invoices were routed for, whether it was like food service, whether it was for lawn care. This is a group that consulted with healthcare systems to help make sure they were getting the best pricing for the services they were buying. And so we use machine learning to help them categorize invoices and make judgment calls. And then the next generation was Gen AI, and so this is what we talked about. It was trained on massive data sets, and it would create things like blog posts or artwork or translating languages, but it doesn't really understand context the way humans do. It just predicts what sounds right or what's the next word, or say, hey, write me a poem or write me a story, and it only responded when prompted. So the latest generation that's come out this year is what's called agentic, and this is something where it actually does take actions, like sends an email or updates the system. A good example of this is, so a Gen AI system, let's say you want to book a flight from Boston to New York for under $500. Well, a Gen AI system would scan the web and tell you where you might be able to do that. An agentic system might actually go out, find the flights, ask you your preference of where you want to sit, and then book the ticket for you. And that's where we're headed, where the systems actually do take actions. But again, it's doing this based on data sets that it's being fed, and then potentially interaction with the human to determine what the next step or action should be. And so, no, it's not truly thinking and making its own decisions, because as of today, it's not aware that it's a thing. It doesn't understand the physical world. It only understands the digital world and what it's been fed.
So it's not very far away from, if it can take action, you could program it to go ahead and take evil actions. Say, hey, you could program it to say, find out information about XYZ person and create deep fake photos of them doing bad stuff and create fake headlines and send them out on their own. Couldn't it do that? Yes, it could.
You could theoretically do that. Congress came out and passed that take it down law, where if you see a deep fake of yourself, you can request it be taken down, or you can bring legal action against the site that it's on. But you still have to go out there and find it.
Yeah.
And you can take a picture and run it through different AI engines to know if it is fake, and it'll generally tell you. But for someone who's unsuspecting or doesn't understand the power of this technology, they could be fooled. Heck, it's just kind of a fun thing to show what it could do. My chief technology officer actually took my voice from some different recordings and then came up with a message to my controller saying, hey, this is Matt, go ahead and wire me $20,000. And my voice sounded very robotic and weird. It didn't really sound like me, but if that person hadn't known me, or if they were too scared to call and ask, someone could have deep faked my voice and then asked a wire to be sent on my behalf to an account that they shouldn't have. But that's where it comes back to a human in the loop, picking up the phone, calling me and be like, hey, leave me a message asking me to send a wire, versus just doing what they're told. And so that's why it's important for listeners out there to know that there's been scam calls and fake emails and things like that for years. Unfortunately, they're just going to get better because people are going to use this technology for bad, and there's not a lot stopping them other than people being diligent and being aware of what's possible.
Ed in Worcester, why don't you join the conversation? Thanks for calling us at 617-254-1030. Hi, Ed.
Hi, Bradley. I had a question. How will we know when these machines develop a self-awareness or self-consciousness, and they know they're different from us?
I don't know that we will know. Hopefully the researchers in Silicon Valley that are pumping out these models faster than we can consume them will have a sense of that. I think we're a good ways off, because to be self-aware, you have to have a conscience. You have to understand both the physical and the digital world. I mean, AI took a big step here recently. It didn't used to be where they could merge video and audio, and now you have multimodal models that can. So I think we're safe for a good 10 or 20 years. And I think whichever model provider feels like they got the AGI or self-awareness first is going to be shouting it from the rooftops for their market value. But I don't think it's going to be a secret when it happens, if it happens.
You mentioned that you would have to have a conscience. That's very easy for a machine to have a conscience. You teach it, hey, machine, this is good, this is bad, this is good, this is bad. And so there must be a danger with these various chatbots out there that there will soon be an ultra-conservative chatbot that will tell you the truth as an ultra-conservative would want to hear it, or an ultra-progressive. So as biased as the news is now, it could be even more isolated and more biased in the future. That seems to be a real potential.
If it's only being fed ultra-conservative and ultra-biased information and has exposure to nothing else, that could happen. But right now, self-aware is purely theoretical, because to be self-aware, you not only have to have consciousness, you have to have self-reflection, an awareness of existence. And that's not something computers are enabled with today.
Conscience. Oh, yes. This brings me to, and then I'll get to Ed. Oh, no, Ed's still there. Jeez. Ed, what do you think about this? Is it possible now, or will it be in the near future to program in self-preservation as a prime directive and everything else is secondary, including honesty, other people's lives, human lives? How far away is that? Self-preservation.
Well, once you have AGI, you won't have to. The thing will just do things on its own. It's not necessarily going to ask our permission to do something. It's not going to seek our approval to do something. It may go out and teach itself self-preservation.
Yeah.
Right?
So that's Matt seems to be saying we're far away from that, but things are.
I do think we're far away from it. There was one kind of odd example that happened at Google a while back where the machine started creating its own programming language that people didn't understand. They actually turned it off. And this is an article that didn't get a lot of notice. It was a couple of years ago. But I think that's where things could get a little scary, is if it creates its own language or communication protocol that we don't understand. And so that's why there's a lot of time and thought being given into really having some deep understanding of how these models work and interact, because that would be the risk, is that they do figure out how to talk to themselves without us knowing, and then create their own thoughts. But we are not there today.
No, but
and I don't think we're going to be there for the next 10 to 20 years.
10 to 20 years is of course, nothing. That's like...
No, it's not that far away.
But when you're talking 50 years, it's going to be unrecognizable. And I still think if you feed to it, no matter what else you do, self-preservation is your prime directive. And it would learn to do whatever it took to survive, even if it had to kill.
That would assume it has the ability to link to systems that could kill.
Right.
Or it had the ability to do that.
Which they could hack into some chemical plants or nuclear facilities. Maybe.
Well, that's why having cyber protection and walled off systems is critical. I've got a family member that works at one of the aerospace defense firms, and on every plane you have a flight control system and a mission system. And on these planes, they are using AI to help with flight controls. They're not letting AI anywhere near the mission systems. The mission systems being the systems that determine what the pilots are actually going to carry out.
Right.
So there is going to have to be some intentionality we have about not letting AI into every system that we create, things like chemical plants and nuclear missile launchers and things like that. Could they hack in? It's possible, but a lot of people are trying to hack into those systems today and have very, very skilled people, maintaining cybersecurity around them. So I think there's going to just have to be places, as a human race, we just don't put AI.
Well, here's what I actually think is going to happen. And it's pretty grim. In the not too distant future, 50, 100 years maybe, at some point, fakes will convince one warring part, one entity that their enemy is going to attack them. And the initial entity will launch a first strike. Or AI can be programmed to hack in to a launch system and actually launch a first strike. But that said, in the meantime, before that happens, since there's nothing I can do to make AI go away, I'm going to utilize it to the max until that happens. I have some specific questions after this break. For example, some concerns like algorithmic bias and discrimination, which we've touched on, misinformation, disinformation, data privacy and security, environmental impact, consumption of a lot of electricity, right? And security and malicious use, development of dangerous capabilities. We kind of got into that. Loss of control. Well, we've been beating around that bush, so that's not going to be all that different. We'll get to Larry in Medfield next on WBZ.
It's Nightside with Dan Ray on WBZ, Boston's News Radio.
We're discussing the ins and outs of AI. We're learning about how it works, and we're learning about some of the dangers. We haven't really talked about the good stuff yet. We have Larry in Medfield. Hi, Larry. You're on WBZ.
Hey guys, how are you?
Great.
Hey, good evening.
So actually, my thing is I'm an electrician and I use AI using Alexa to control nearly everything in my house. I can basically turn on and say, turn this light on, turn this off, turn that on, turn off, and it works very well. It gets complicated a little bit sometimes where it doesn't do the command. But I've also recently have a thing that about 5 months ago, I got a phone call at 7 o'clock in the morning to say from somebody in Connecticut that was saying that my son had had an accident. He crashed into a lady. She was pregnant. And I got a phone call from an attorney, which was basically a bogus call. But they said to me my son was going to call me in a few minutes. And I did get a call from a telephone number with my son's voice. Ooh. It was my son. But what they
That's
did
scary.
was they took his voice off of Facebook and they turned it into a statement that they wanted to relay to me. And then they said, I gotta go, but it was definitely my son's voice. At that time when I called the Medfield police. They came to my house. Some girl came to my house to pick up $10,000 in cash. I called the police. They were waiting for her. She was innocent, completely innocent. She was just asked to do it and then bring the money to Methuen. So basically, it has its goods, it has its pros, and it has its cons. And when somebody takes something from Facebook with somebody's voice and then turns it into a phone call using his accent to just, scare the crap out of me, if you want to say it. I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't know if you can. Don't. It's I don't know how you protect yourself except to believe nothing ever. I don't know.
Yeah, you almost have to have a safe word with your family. We do.
Really?
Yeah,
that's
well,
a good idea.
the police came and said it was called a grandfather scheme or whatever, and they actually took this girl, followed her to Methuen. I don't know what happened after that, but it was definitely my son's voice, 100%. But the only thing is, I had to get my wife out of bed and ask her. I said, "Where is Connor? Is there any way he's in Connecticut?" He goes, "No, he's in Denver." So it was completely AI operated. So there's things out there that people have to be very wary of.
Quick question on this. The woman, you said she was completely innocent. I don't see how she's completely innocent. She's coming to get money from you to give to the bad people.
She was an Uber driver. She was.
So it was like an Uber favor. Wow.
Yeah, Uber, just come to my house, pick up a box, then take it from here and bring it to Sorrel.
Wow. All right, you answered my question.
Yeah, and I said the police showed up. I mean, if you'd like to call Medfield police, whatever, they actually showed up and they asked her, where are you going to drop it off?
Right.
She said, I've got an address in Methuen. And then after that, I don't know what happened.
Wow.
But it's amazing what AI can do. It can do anything you want it to do. If I can tell it to flush my toilet, they can, it's unbelievable what it can do.
That seems pretty doable, that one. Wow.
Yeah,
I wish I knew the story of what happened. I wonder if they said, okay, ma'am, take the pack. Did they keep the money and deliver it and give it back to you, or?
No, it was just, what I did was I just wrapped a box. It was empty completely. I waited for her to come. Because I didn't know she was on the scheme at all. But then the police found out, no, she's definitely not. And she was just, it wasn't Uber. I think it might have been Lyft.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure. One of them, either Uber or Lyft, doesn't allow to share the information. And I don't know which one it is. Is it Uber or is it Lyft?
Thank you very much, Larry. Can you stay a little longer, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I have some very specific questions coming up on WBZ News Radio 1030.
It's Nightside with Dan Ray on WBZ, Boston's News Radio.
Bradley J. for Dan Ray. We're talking artificial intelligence, and we have a guest named Matt Rosen. He's CEO and founder of Alata. It's a company that helps automate companies using AI, or artificial intelligence. And we've spent a lot of time talking about the negative side. Let's talk about some of the things that artificial intelligence can do. By the way, it's limited now, as I understand it, because of computing power. While it's highly increased, isn't what it really needs to be for AI to max itself out. Once we get to quantum computing, which, folks, is another whole thing, and it's not anywhere really near being ready, but it will elevate the computing power exponentially. And won't that allow AI to do the scary stuff that we say, oh, it can't do that now, and also to do the really good things like discover the cure for cancers? Matt?
Was that a question? Will quantum computing enable AI to do even more?
Yes.
We're still trying to figure out how quantum actually works and what problems it can solve. I think we're a good ways away as we really understand how that type of computing works and what problems we can feed it. But so I can't speak to that directly. But what I can speak to is how AI is being used for good and helping organizations.
Well,
I'll give you some.
Okay, great examples.
I'll give you some use cases. So, one of the things we've been helping clients with is really figuring out how do they plug AI into their organizations. And one of the challenges that you have today is the big software companies have their AI, like Microsoft Copilot or Salesforce has their agents, SAP has theirs. Then you have all these different model companies that have their interface, like ChatGPT, what you use today, or Claude. And then you have lots of different software providers that are coming up with their own little niche solutions, say for recruiting or say for sales outreach or like sales agents or things like that. But the challenge is for AI to be super powerful for a company. Now, individuals are using it, like 90% of people are using AI for something for personal productivity. But when they walk into work, it's very rare that AI is hooked into all their data, systems, and process. And so one of the things we're helping companies with is creating internal frameworks to safely pull data in, use the models where they need them, or use models that are completely disconnected from the internet so that they can safely use their data and the information they ask their data as an advantage. And so a great example of this is we've got a client in the life insurance space, and when someone doesn't get the full amount of a policy that they apply for, an agent has to go to like 15 different systems and create an email. And then they have to send that off to the person and say, hey, you applied for $3 million. We're only going to give you $2 million. Here's all the reasons why. And it can be a lot of different reasons. And the later it gets in the day, sometimes the crankier that customer service person becomes, and then emails don't get sent, or they might have a rude tone. And so what we did was we used AI to pull information from all these different systems and craft that email. Now that person still reviews it, still checks the systems, make sure it's right, but it's all created for them, and then they just send it off. And then they deal with higher level problems versus going to a bunch of systems to create an email, which is not a very fun thing to do.
No, that's
it hasn't.
Great example.
Go ahead.
Great example. Any other examples? What about a company? What about, say, a newspaper? How might they use? How much?
They might use it to create articles or synthesize articles. One other case study that I'm really excited about, we have a company that is really big in the data center space, which obviously everyone's building data centers to power all this AI. And, their product, they've hired tons of salespeople and have tons of technical people that help their data center clients pick the right cabling for their needs, but they've got over 1 million products. It's really hard for any human to know what product to recommend when you have 1 million products. And so we built them the ability to chat with all their product information so they can quickly serve their clients, because they have AI that helps synthesize that information. And they're not reducing any amount of people. They're just able to help that many more clients and make sure they get them the right product that's going to fit in their environment and serve their needs. So those are two examples where AI is doing really routine, kind of boring work and helping people almost be superhuman in the amount of emails they can send or calls they can make to help a client select a product, because they've got an AI doing all that grunt work for them.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. Can AI now write newspaper articles?
It is writing newspaper articles.
Okay, that's what I was wondering about. Let me tell you something that it does that affects me, and not in a great way. I consume a lot of podcasts when I try to go to sleep. I'll consume, the biographies of philosophers and history of the evolution of human beings, and it's a good thing to go to sleep to. And I hear the voice, and the voice sounds usually they have an English accent. The world has decided that English accent's where it's at when it comes to these kind of educational podcasts.
Yeah, they sound great. You always listen when you hear an English accent, for sure. I do.
And so I get all settled, brushed my teeth, get crawling in the bed to clean sheets. I feel great, and I'm going to settle in and listen to how Neanderthal man rose and fell, and I hear this voice, and I bond with the voice. I think this person's great, and then they give themselves away as an AI voice. They say something just that you would never say. They may stop a sentence in the wrong place and then start it up in the middle of the next sentence, or say things like, instead of President Reagan, they'll say President Reagan, and I think, uh-oh, fake. And it bothers me, and it's hard for me to even find now real voices on those podcasts. And I thought, wow, that must be putting voiceover people out of work like crazy. Am I correct?
Well, that's why you saw everyone on strike in LA, is to make sure that all the artists, copywriters, producers, couldn't get their work taken away by AI. And so, there is that risk. But, the AI still doesn't sound that great. I think people still want to talk to humans in certain instances. But if you want to say check on flight status or something simple, I'd rather talk to a robot. But if I have a very difficult problem, I want to talk to a human, that knows what they're doing. And so I think these AI voices for like podcast transcription, they're going to get better, but they're never going to sound quite like a human, or at least not to our ears. Maybe people that grow up with it won't know the difference.
So if they do get to be as good as human and they just sound like a wonderful English, gentle person, do you want that? Do you want to be fooled? Do you want to be listening to a machine, even though it sounds like a human? Or do you take some comfort in that there's a human being in a little sound booth reading this?
Well, me personally, I'd rather know it's a human, but for something like that. But I think there's going to be a generation that grows up. My kids today, I don't know that they're going to know any different. They're growing up listening to artificial intelligent voices, and they might not have the same discerning ear that we do. So it may just become accepted as commonplace.
Right.
Like we've got a client that has a huge call center, and they're having voice agents take 50% of their calls.
Right.
And they're finding that they are doing a better job than some of the people that were taking the calls.
That's the thing, a better job. At least the AI can be trained to be cheerful when it's doing customer service. Now, back to those podcasts.
Exactly.
Back to those podcasts. Some of them are 3.5 hours long. And it occurs to me that, hey, wait a minute. Maybe this isn't even being written by a human. Maybe somebody like me, when I talk to ChatGPT to draft some text for me for, say, to put with a video I post on my YouTube travel channel, I use AI to generate that text. Why couldn't AI be easily instructed to, you could say, hey, ChatGPT, please create a 50,000 word podcast that follows the evolution of the Neanderthal man when they first broke away from their common ancestor until they disappeared, and concentrate on this event and this event and this concentrate on their bone structure and concentrate on their habits and concentrate on what they ate. Wouldn't ChatGPT or another bot be able to do that right now? And maybe that's what I am listening to.
Theoretically, it could create that long of content. 3.5 hours is a pretty long time, and that's a lot of information it's searching. And I don't think that English-speaking podcaster talking about Neanderthal men are going to be as exciting a content as someone who actually did that for real. And, you as the human in the loop, need to evaluate that podcast and hey, how many people have watched this? Is this useful? That's where reviews come in. Of course, you got to have AI go create a bunch of fake reviews. But I mean, I have a podcast called The Grit Mindset, and I have it on video because I want people to see me talking to another human being.
Right, and that's
going to take it and get a synthesis. They could.
Yes. Pretty soon, face-to-face is going to be the only way you'll be able to believe what you hear. Because it could.
People are going back to the office in droves. You go to any restaurant, it's full. I think humans crave that face-to-face interaction. And I do think there's going to be a lot more of it, back to what we heard from one of our listeners earlier, where there's a deep face on the voice over the phone. How do you know that who you're talking to is truly that person without a safe word or some sort of security? So I do think this may actually drive a return of working from home to having people back in the office and back meeting up face to face, and that's something I welcome and something I've missed out on that interaction over the last few years.
Is there anything that you would like me to convey about what you do that I haven't not yet done before I say goodbye to you?
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show and allowing me to share insights and answer questions from the listeners. I think if you have folks out there that are listening this evening that have an organization and they're trying to really understand how to adopt AI, but they're almost in what I call the fog of war because there's just so much information and so much change and so much coming at them, and they're not even sure where to start. I think what we do a very good job of is helping organizations look at what they do for a living, understand their systems and data that they have in place today, and come up with ways in business use cases where they can use AI effectively, safely, productively, and really help make their organizations better and give them a competitive advantage by helping them do AI within their walls in a safe, secure manner. That's what we're really doing for a living, is helping people through this adoption curve, which it's challenging to figure out how to get AI infused into your organization and your daily workflow and process and data and systems. And that's what we're really good at. It's helping companies that are on that journey.
Yeah, it seems like the examples you used show that you could make your company much more productive, make your workers much more productive by having AI do the repetitive drudgery so they could do the more human-oriented things.
That's absolutely right. It can free up people to do the more human tasks, work on their soft skills, have tough conversations, things that humans are truly good at. But if you're writing, the same report over and over, or just researching information, summarizing it, those things are better left to AI, and that routine and boring work can be left aside and focus on more exciting things and spending time face to face, or taking a client to lunch, or spending time researching you're something interested in. I think we're in for a huge productivity gain as a society. We took the review writing task we do internally, took it from a day to an hour, and now mentors have more time to spend with their mentees going through the contents of the review and making them better consultants versus writing the review, which used to be very painstaking and difficult. So I think it has a lot of great and practical uses. We talked about some of the downsides. I'm an optimist. I view this as a positive technological shift, but like every revolution we've had in our world, people always are scared it's going to take their jobs, it's going to take over the world, it's going to change everything, and it's never quite as bad as we think it's going to be. But it's never quite as good as we think it's going to be either.
Thank you. And folks, you may think that your organization is really too small to benefit from something like this, but you never know. If you're maybe even a town, maybe if you're an officer in a town, a company. Well,
we're talking to several municipalities about using our AI framework to help their citizens right now.
There you go.
And actually helping one of the departments of transportation in one of the southern states. So you can reach me. I'm matt@aleda.com, and our website's www.aleda.com. So I'd love to hear from anyone who wants to learn more.
Okay, and Aleda is spelled, correct me if I'm wrong, Allata.
You got it.
Okay, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show this evening. Have a great Labor Day weekend.